I started waiting tables when I was 18 to supplement my hourly income at a popular fast food chain, and soon enough I became well acquainted with an older man named Tim. He was probably in his mid-60 seconds, and he was very obese. He'd regularly come into the little diner that I worked at, and he was a regular prior to my employment there. The other younger females who worked in the restaurant didn't like to wait on him. It wasn't just his hygiene, which was frankly neglected, a stale mix of mildew and old sweat that seemed to follow him like a fog, but it was the way he looked at you. It wasn't a leer exactly, it was a stare. A dead, heavy stare that lingered too long on your hands when you set down a coffee cup or on your back as you walked away to the kitchen. But I was saving for college, and my manager, a skeptic named Dave, who cared more about table turnover than staff safety, always said Tim pays in cash and tips 20%. Just smile and refill his iced tea. So I became Tim's girl. Not by choice, but by elimination. For the first 3 months, things were mundane. Tim would come in every Tuesday and Thursday night at 8:00 p.m. sharp. He sat in booth 4, the one furthest from the door facing the entrance. He always ordered the meatloaf special, extra gravy, and a Diet Coke with 3 lemons. I fell into a routine. I'd see his rusted beige sedan pull into the lot, and my stomach would do a little flip, not of fear yet, but of annoyance. I'd grab the menu, walk over, and do the "Hi Tim," the usual routine. He would grunt, nod, and watch me. The shift in dynamics started subtly. It's hard to pinpoint the exact moment a customer becomes a threat, because in the service industry you are trained to ignore your gut instincts. You are trained to be polite above all else. It started with the questions. At first they were generic. Working hard tonight, school going okay. But then the questions became specific, too specific. I didn't see your blue Honda in the lot today. You walk here, you look tired. Keeping you late at the library again. I remember freezing the first time he mentioned the library. I had never told him I was a student, let alone that I spent my night studying. I laughed it off nervously. Small town, I guess, I mumbled, refilling his glass just to have an excuse to look away. I went to the back kitchen to breathe. Lucy, the cook, a tough 50-year-old woman who usually served as the voice of reason, saw me shaking. "He's being creepy again," she asked, scraping a grill. "He knows I go to the library, Lucy." I never told him that. Lucy shrugged, flipping a burger. "People talk, hon. He probably overheard you telling Dave or one of the other girls. Don't overthink it. Just get his money and get him out." That was the calm thinker logic I tried to adopt. Don't overthink it. 2 weeks later, the gifts started. Waitresses get gifts sometimes. Usually it's a candy bar or a leftover flower from a wedding. Tim didn't bring candy. I came to clear his table after he'd left one rainy Tuesday. Under his plate, soaked in gravy and grease, was a small plastic hair clip. My blood ran cold. It was a cheap pink butterfly clip. I had lost it 3 days ago. I hadn't lost it at the diner. I had lost it at the grocery store 3 miles away. I picked it up with a napkin, my hands trembling. I walked straight to Dave's office. "Dave, look at this," I said, my voice rising in panic. The guy, Tim, he left this. I lost this at Kroger on Saturday. Dave didn't even look up from his ledger. So maybe he found it. Maybe he bought one just like it. You think he's stalking you at the grocery store. He can barely walk, let alone stalk someone. He's weird, Dave. He knows things. He's lonely, Dave snapped. Stop overreacting. If you don't want the table, quit. I needed the money. I swallowed, my fear threw the clip in the trash, and went back to work. But the feeling of being watched intensified. I started checking my rearview mirror constantly. Every beige car triggered a spike of adrenaline. The turning point the night the psychological horror truly set in was a slow Thursday in November. It was pouring rain, a torrential downpour that battered the diner windows. The place was empty except for me, Lucy in the back, and Tim in booth 4. The power flickered. The hum of the refrigerator died, then buzzed back to life. The atmosphere was heavy, suffocating. I was wiping down the counter, trying to avoid eye contact with him. "You live in the Cedar Creek apartments now, don't you?" His voice was low, barely audible over the rain. I stopped wiping. The rag went still in my hand. Cedar Creek was a new complex. I had moved in 4 days ago. My name wasn't on the lease yet. I hadn't changed my address on my license. I turned slowly. "Excuse me," Tim smiled. It was the first time I'd ever seen him smile. It wasn't a happy look. It was a bearing of yellowed teeth. Unit 2B, he wheezed. Second floor. Good view of the woods. My heart hammered against my ribs so hard I thought it would crack them. How do you know that I demanded, abandoning my customer service voice? He just took a sip of his Diet Coke. I like the woods, he said. You can see everything from the woods if you're quiet enough. I backed away, retreating into the kitchen. I was hyperventilating. Lucy, I gasped. He knows where I live. He knows my apartment number. Lucy looked at me, and for the first time her calm demeanor cracked. She wiped her hands on her apron. Okay, that's it. I'm calling the cops. No, Dave burst out of the office, having heard the commotion. No cops. You want to scare away the regulars. He's messing with you. He knows my unit number, Dave, I screamed. So he saw you drive in. You're a pretty girl, guys. Look, deal with it. Dave went out to the floor to smooth things over. I watched through the service window, terrified. I saw Dave laughing, patting Tim on the shoulder. Tim wasn't laughing. He was staring right at the service window. Right at me. He lifted his hand and made a shape with his fingers. He mimicked a camera shutter. Click. I spent the rest of the shift hiding in the walk-in freezer, shivering not from the cold, but from the realization that Dave was wrong. Tim wasn't just a lonely old man. He was a hunter, and he had been studying his prey for months. When my shift ended at midnight, the rain had stopped, leaving a thick mist over the parking lot. The diner lights reflected off the wet asphalt. I'll walk you to your car, Lucy offered, sensing my terror. Thanks, I whispered. We walked out the back door. The parking lot was desolate. My blue Honda was parked under the lone streetlight. See, Lucy said, forcing a smile. Nothing. He's gone. I breathed a sigh of relief, reaching for my keys. Yeah, maybe I am just overreacting. I unlocked my car and opened the driver's side door. That's when I saw it. Sitting on my driver's seat wasn't a gift. It wasn't a tip. It was a Polaroid photo. I picked it up the streetlight, illuminating the glossy image. It was a photo of me sleeping in my bed, taken from inside my new apartment, and written in black Sharpie across the bottom were 3 words, "Nice lock, clumsy." I screamed, dropping the photo. What Lucy yelled. Before I could answer, the sound of a car engine roaring to life came from the darkness behind the dumpster. The headlights of a beige sedan blinded us. Tim hadn't left. He was waiting. The beige sedan didn't ram us. It didn't speed up. It just sat there, idling aggressively, the high beams cutting through the mist and blinding us. The engine revved a low mechanical growl that vibrated in my chest, and then slowly, terrifyingly, the car began to back up. Tim wasn't charging. He was retreating. He reversed smoothly out of the lot and disappeared into the night, blending into the dark tree line of the main road. Lucy grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. Get in my car. Now. We scrambled into her beat-up Ford, locking the doors instantly. My hands were shaking so bad I couldn't even dial 911. Lucy had to do it. The dispatcher's voice was calm too, calm contrasting with the chaotic terror flooding my brain. They told us to meet an officer at my apartment complex. The drive there was a blur of paranoia. Every set of headlights in the rearview mirror looked like his. Every shadow on the side of the road looked like a heavy-set man waiting. When we arrived at Cedar Creek, 2 squad cars were already there, their red and blue lights flashing silently against the brick building. It felt surreal, like a movie scene I wasn't supposed to be in. I showed the officer a stern man named Deputy Miller the Polaroid. He wrote this, Miller asked, shining his flashlight on the glossy surface. Nice, lock, clumsy. Yes, I choked out. He sat in my booth tonight. He told me he could see my apartment from the woods. The police swept the perimeter first, then they escorted me upstairs. I expected the door to be smashed open, the lock broken. But it wasn't. It was locked. Do you have your keys? Miller asked. I fumbled for them, handing them over. He unlocked the door and pushed it open. The apartment was dead silent. My scent, vanilla, and laundry detergent hung in the air, but there was something else underneath it. That same stale mildew smell from the diner. They cleared the rooms, guns drawn. Bedroom clear, bathroom clear, closet clear. It looks secure, Miller said, holstering his weapon. There's no sign of forced entry. "Are you sure you locked the door when you left for work?" "Yes, I always lock it," I insisted, feeling the skepticism creeping into his voice, just like Dave's. "Well," Miller sighed, walking over to the window, "if he picked the lock, he's a professional." But he stopped. He leaned in closer to the window pane. "What?" I asked, my heart hammering. "Come here." I walked over. The window in my bedroom looked out toward the dense woods behind the complex. Miller pointed his flashlight at the window latch. It wasn't broken. It was unlocked, but it was what was on the glass that made my knees buckle. On the inside of the window, in the condensation that had formed from the cool night air, was a smiley face drawn with a finger, and next to it a single word, "Soon." "He didn't pick the lock to get in," Miller said grimly. "He came in through the window, but this implies he was here recently. Very recently." He shined his light down at the carpet below the window. The fibers were matted down, large, heavy indentations. "He was standing here," Miller whispered, "watching you sleep." "No," I whispered back, a wave of nausea hitting me. "The photo. He took the photo while I was sleeping." "But the writing." "He left the photo on my car seat at the diner." The realization hit us both at the same time. To put the photo on my car seat, he had to leave the apartment before I finished my shift. But the smiley face in the condensation was fresh. The condensation would have evaporated if it had been done hours ago. "He came back," Miller said, unclipping his radio. "He was here after he dropped the photo off. He was likely in here when you and your friend pulled up to the diner. We found the nest 10 minutes later. It wasn't in my apartment. It was in the crawl space access panel in the hallway, ceiling directly outside my door. Inside, they found a sleeping bag empty, wrappers of the same mints Tim always ate, and a notebook. The notebook was filled with times. 6:45 a.m. Wake up. 7:30 a.m. Shower blue towel. 8:00 a.m. Leaves for class. He hadn't just been stalking me. He had been living above me, waiting for the right moment. The nice lock clumsy wasn't about my front door. It was about the window I had left unlocked once, 2 days prior, to air out the smell of paint. He had gotten in then, and he had keyed a copy of the front door. Tim was never caught. The police traced his license plate from Lucy's description, but the car had been stolen from a junkyard 3 weeks prior. The name Tim was fake. He was a ghost. I quit the diner the next day. I broke my lease, paid the penalty, and moved back in with my parents, 3 towns over. I still work as a waitress, but I work the breakfast shift now. It feels safer in the daylight. But sometimes when I'm pouring coffee for a heavy-set man, or I smell that distinct scent of mildew and old sweat, my hands start to shake. And every night before I sleep, I check the windows. Once, twice, 3 times. Because I know that somewhere out there he still has that photo. And I know he's patient. There is a specific kind of loneliness that only exists at 3:00 a.m. in a roadside diner. It's not a peaceful quiet. It's a heavy, expectant silence, amplified by the hum of the fluorescent lights and the distant drone of semi-trucks on the interstate. I was 22 working the graveyard shift at the Midway, a 24-hour greasy spoon located on a desolate stretch of highway between Nevada and Utah. It was the kind of place where you didn't ask questions. Truckers came in for coffee and pie, bloodshot eyes staring at the counter, and then they left. We didn't get locals because there weren't any locals for 50 miles. My coworker that night was a guy named Ben. Ben was the skeptic. He was a college dropout who thought everything was a conspiracy theory or a joke. He spent most of the shift in the back, listening to podcasts and prepping the kitchen, which mostly meant napping on a stack of flour sacks. That left me the calm thinker, or at least I tried to be manning the front. It was a Tuesday, typically our deadest night. The wind was howling outside, rattling the plate glass windows. A dust storm was kicking up, turning the world outside into a swirling brown void. At 3:15 a.m., the bell above the door chimed. I looked up, expecting a trucker. Instead, a family walked in. This immediately set off alarm bells in my head. Who takes a family road trip at 3:00 a.m. on a Tuesday? And who stops here? There was a father, a mother, and a little girl, maybe 6 years old. They looked normal enough on the surface. The dad was wearing a polo shirt and khakis. The mom was in a sundress, odd for the chilly desert night, and the girl was holding a rag doll, but something was off. They moved in perfect unison. They didn't look around. They didn't talk to each other. They walked in a straight line, the father leading the mother, following the child, trailing directly to the booth in the far back corner. The shadows were deepest there. "Hi there, just the three of you," I called out, putting on my customer service smile. They didn't answer. They just slid into the booth. The father and mother sat on one side, the little girl on the other. They sat rigid, their posture perfectly straight, staring at the center of the table. I grabbed 3 menus and a pitcher of water and walked over. "Rough weather out there," I said, trying to break the ice. "Can I get you guys started with some coffee?" The father turned his head slowly to look at me. His skin was pale, almost waxy. His eyes were wide, unblinking. "We are hungry," he said. His voice was monotone. Flat. No inflection. "Okay," I said, feeling a chill run down my spine. "Well, the kitchen is open. The Grand Slam is popular. We require meat," the mother said. She didn't look at me. She kept staring at the table. Rare. I wrote it down, my hand shaking slightly. 3 steaks. Rare. And for the little one, I looked at the girl. She was looking at me. Her eyes were terrified. She wasn't blinking, but tears were pooling in her eyes, threatening to spill over. She opened her mouth to speak, but the father placed his hand on the table. A heavy thud. The girl snapped her mouth shut. "She will have the same," the father said. I backed away. "Okay. Coming right up." I walked into the kitchen, my heart rate spiking. "Ben," I hissed. "Wake up." Ben groaned, pulling an earbud out. "What? There's a family at table 6. They are weirding me out. Like, cult weird." Ben rolled his eyes. "It's the desert shift. Weirdos are our demographic. Just cook the steaks. They want 3 steaks rare. For a 6-year-old, too." "Rich people," Ben shrugged. He got up and started slapping meat onto the grill. "Don't stare at them, don't engage. Just get the tip." I went back out to the floor to refill napkin dispensers, keeping an eye on them. They hadn't moved. They hadn't picked up the menus. They were just sitting there, hands folded on the table, staring at the empty space where the food would be. The little girl was the only one moving. She was tapping her finger on the table. Over and over. I pretended to wipe down the counter near them. I needed to see if she was okay. The father's head snapped toward me. "Is the food ready? It's only been 2 minutes, sir. It takes a bit to cook a steak." He stared at me for a long, uncomfortable 5 seconds. "Time is irrelevant," he muttered, turning back to the table. I retreated to the server station behind the counter. The phone rang. The sound made me jump. I grabbed the receiver. "The Midway, this is Jen. Is anyone there?" A woman's voice. Panicked. Breathless. "Excuse me, is there a family there? A man, a woman, a little girl?" My blood froze. I looked at table 6. They were still statues. "Yes," I whispered. "They just came in." "Who is this?" "Listen to me very carefully," the woman said, her voice trembling with hysteria. "Do not go near them. Do not serve them. Lock yourself in the office." "Why? What's going on?" "That's not a family," the woman sobbed. "I'm the mother. That man, he took my husband and my daughter 3 days ago. I just saw the news. They found their bodies in a ditch in Nevada yesterday morning." The phone slipped in my sweaty grip. What I choked out. If they're dead, then who is sitting in my booth? The woman on the line let out a sound I will never forget, a mix of a scream and a gag. "They stole their skins," she whispered. "The police said they were skinned. Whoever is in your restaurant, they are wearing them." I dropped the phone. It dangled by the cord, swaying back and forth. I looked up slowly. The father was standing up. He wasn't walking toward the bathroom. He was walking toward the counter. Toward me. And as he passed under the bright fluorescent light of the pie display, I saw it. At the back of his neck, where the collar of his polo shirt sat, the skin was loose. It was bagging like a suit that was 2 sizes too big. And underneath the gap in the skin, I saw something dark. Something wet. I scrambled backward, knocking over a stack of cups. "Ben," I screamed. "Ben." The father stopped. He tilted his head at an unnatural angle, something cracking audibly in his neck. He smiled, but the smile didn't move the rest of his face. It just stretched the skin, tearing the corners of the mouth slightly. "We are still hungry," he said. The next 60 seconds were a blur of adrenaline and primal confusion. I didn't wait for Ben to process what was happening. As the thing posing as a man, took another step toward the counter, I bolted for the kitchen swinging doors. "Lock it! Lock the back!" I screamed, slamming into the stainless steel prep table. Ben, who was holding a spatula and looking half asleep, dropped it. "Jen, what the hell is the swinging doors behind me?" Flew open with a violence that shouldn't have been possible for a man of that size. The father stood in the doorway. Under the harsh fluorescent lights of the kitchen, the reality of the situation became sickeningly clear. It wasn't a supernatural monster. It was something far more grounded and far more disturbing. The loose skin I had seen wasn't magical. It was a crude, surgical staple job. The man was wearing a mask made of human flesh, pulled tight over his own features, stapled at the collar and the hairline. His eyes were wild, dilated pupils, swimming in bloodshot whites, staring out from behind the stolen face of a suburban dad. Ben froze. The skeptic died in that moment, replaced by a terrified kid. The man lunged. He didn't scream or roar. He just made a wet, gurgling sound. I grabbed a pot of boiling water from the stove. Sarah had left it simmering for deep cleaning the vents. I didn't think. I just threw it. The water hit the man square in the chest and face. He howled a high-pitched shriek that sounded nothing like a father and everything like a wounded animal. The steam rose off the dead skin mask, and he clawed at his face, stumbling back into the dining room. "The freezer!" Ben yelled, grabbing my wrist. We scrambled toward the walk-in freezer at the back of the kitchen. It was the only room with a heavy industrial lock. We threw ourselves inside the heavy door, sealing with a thud, and Ben engaged the safety latch. We were plunged into darkness save for the small safety light above the fan. The air was frigid, biting at my exposed arms. "Did you see his face?" Ben whispered, his voice trembling so hard he could barely speak. "Jen, he was wearing a face." I know, I sobbed, sliding down the wall to sit on a crate of frozen fries. "The woman on the phone. She said they stole their skins." We huddled there for what felt like hours. We could hear them outside. Not shouting, not banging, just scratching. Scritch, 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 like rats in the walls. They were scratching at the steel door with something metallic. A knife, a fork, then the little girl's voice came through the thick insulation, muffled but audible. "Daddy is still hungry. Open the door." It wasn't a child's voice. It was the voice of a grown woman pitching her voice up, mimicking a child. It was mocking, playful. "Open the door, Jen. We need meat." I clamped my hands over my ears. Ben was hyperventilating, gripping a box cutter he'd pulled from his pocket. Then, silence. The scratching stopped. The voices stopped. We waited. 10 minutes. 20. 30. The cold was seeping into our bones. Hypothermia was becoming a real threat. "We have to check," Ben said finally. "We'll freeze to death in here." He slowly disengaged the latch. He pushed the door open an inch. The kitchen was empty. We crept out, armed with the box cutter and a frozen leg of lamb. The kitchen was silent. The swinging doors to the dining area were still swaying slightly, as if a draft had caught them. We moved to the front. The dining room was empty. The family was gone, but they had left a tip. Sitting on table 6, arranged neatly on the 3 plates where their steaks should have been, were 3 items. On the father's plate, a wallet open to an ID of a man named David Miller. The photo matched the face the killer had been wearing. On the mother's plate, a set of car keys covered in dried blood. On the child's plate, the rag doll the girl had been holding, but the doll was different now. Its head had been ripped off, and stuffed inside the neck of the doll was a wad of cash, a $20 bill. Written on the bill in red marker was a smiley face. The police arrived 10 minutes later. I had never hung up the phone. The line had been open the whole time. They found the stolen car abandoned 3 miles down the highway, torched. The family was never caught. The authorities determined they were a trio of drifters wanted for a string of brutal home invasions across the Southwest. They were trophy hunters, psychopathic killers, who wore the clothing and parts of their victims to play house in public settings. I quit the Midway that night. I moved back east to a city where the lights never go out and there are people everywhere. But sometimes when I'm on the subway or in a crowded elevator, I'll see a family. A normal, happy family. And I'll find myself staring at the back of the father's neck, looking for the staples, looking for the loose skin, and I wonder if they're hungry. Restaurants and old buildings have a specific kind of energy. They hold on to smells, old grease, stale wine, damp wood, and they hold on to sounds. I learned this when I took a job at the Cellar, an upscale steakhouse in downtown Boston. The building was a converted townhouse from the late 1800s. It was narrow, 4 stories tall, with the kitchen in the basement and the dining rooms on the first and second floors. It was claustrophobic, hot, and constantly chaotic. I was a food runner. My job was simple: take the heavy trays of food from the basement kitchen, ride the service elevator up, and drop them at the tables. But the service elevator was prone to breaking down. When it did, we had to use the dumbwaiter. The dumbwaiter was an ancient manual pulley system. It was a wooden box about 3 feet by 3 feet inside a dark shaft that ran the height of the building. You'd load the food, pull the ropes, and hoist it up to the dining room. I hated the dumbwaiter. Every time you opened the hatch to load it, a blast of cold, rotting air hit you. It smelled like wet earth and dead rats. My manager was a guy named Marcus. He was the skeptic archetype, all business, no nonsense, didn't believe in ghosts, didn't believe in breaks. "Stop complaining about the draft, Mike," he'd say. "Just pull the rope. Table 4 is waiting for their ribeyes." My coworker, a waitress named Chloe, was the opposite. She was the overreactor. She refused to use the dumbwaiter alone. I hear things in the shaft, she told me one night during a smoke break. "Like what rats?" I asked, lighting a cigarette. "No," she whispered, looking around as if Marcus might hear. "Whispering. And chewing." I laughed it off. "It's an old building, Chloe. Pipes hiss. Wood settles. It's not pipes, Mike. Last week I sent up a basket of bread. When it got to the second floor, the bread was gone. Marcus probably ate it," I joked. "The basket was still warm," she said, her eyes wide. "And there were crumbs all over the inside of the box. Someone stopped the box between floors and ate it." I didn't believe her. Not until the night of the blizzard. It was mid-February, and a massive nor'easter had slammed the city. The restaurant was surprisingly busy. Rich people love to brave the elements for a good steak. Around 8:00 p.m., the power surged and the main service elevator died. Great Marcus shouted over the kitchen noise. "Use the dumbwaiter. We have a full house." I was stationed in the basement kitchen. My job was to load. Chloe was on the second floor, pulling. I loaded 2 fillets and a side of mashed potatoes into the wooden box. Sending up, I yelled into the shaft. "Ready?" Chloe's voice echoed down, tinny and distant. I pulled the ropes. The heavy box creaked and groaned as it ascended into the darkness of the shaft. I watched the ropes move, hand over hand. Suddenly, the ropes stopped. The box wasn't at the second floor yet. I knew the count. It took 20 pulls to get there. I had only done 10. "Chloe," I yelled into the shaft. "Why'd you stop?" "I didn't," Chloe yelled back. "It's stuck. The rope won't budge." I grabbed the rope on my end and tugged. It was rock solid. It felt like the box had snagged on something, or like someone was holding it. "Hang on," I yelled. "I'm gonna yank it." I wrapped the coarse hemp rope around my hands and heaved with all my weight. There was a sudden snap and the rope went slack, but the box didn't fall. "Did you get it?" I called up. Silence. "Chloe, Mike." Chloe's voice drifted down. It was different now, trembling. "Mike, the box is moving, but I'm not pulling it." I stepped back from the open hatch in the basement. I looked up into the darkness. The ropes were swaying. Someone or something was pulling the box up, but not to the second floor. It was going higher, toward the third floor. The third floor was abandoned. It used to be storage, but the floorboards were rotted out. No one was allowed up there. The door was padlocked. "Marcus," I yelled. Marcus stormed over. "Where is the food, Mike?" "The box went to the third floor," I said, pointing at the shaft. "Don't be stupid. The pulley is jammed." "No, look at the ropes. It's at the top." Marcus peered into the shaft. He shone his flashlight up. The beam cut through the dust motes. Way up, 40 feet above us, we saw the bottom of the wooden box. It was stationary at the third floor opening. And then we saw it. A hand. A pale, filthy human hand reached out from the darkness of the third floor and grabbed the bottom of the box. Then a face peered over the edge. It wasn't a ghost. It was a man. He had long matted gray hair and a beard that reached his chest. His skin was the color of ash. He looked down at us, his eyes reflecting the flashlight beam like a raccoon's. He wasn't looking at us with anger. He was looking at us with gratitude. He reached into the box, grabbed the 2 fillets with his bare hands, and retreated into the darkness of the third floor. "Hey," Marcus screamed, his skepticism vanishing instantly. "That's $300 worth of meat. Get down here." The man didn't answer. We just heard the wet sound of chewing echoing down the shaft. "I'm calling the cops," Marcus said, pulling out his phone. "Someone's squatting upstairs." "Wait," I said, a realization hitting me. "Marcus, the third floor is padlocked from the outside. You have the only key." Marcus froze. He patted his pocket. "The keys were there." "He didn't use the door," I whispered. "He's been using the shaft. He lives in the walls." Marcus grabbed a meat cleaver. "Come with me, Mike." "What? No way. I'm not going up there alone. We need to secure the building before the police get here. If he starts a fire, this whole place goes up." I grabbed a heavy boning knife, my heart pounding in my throat. We left the safety of the busy kitchen and walked to the stairwell. The stairs to the third floor were covered in dust, a thick layer of gray silence. But as we climbed, we saw footprints. Not shoe prints, bare footprints. Hundreds of them. They went up and down the stairs, but they stopped at the second floor landing. He had been coming down to the restaurant at night. We reached the third floor door. The padlock was still there, rusted shut. "See," Marcus whispered. "Locked." "The dumbwaiter access," I said. "It's inside." Marcus kicked the door. The rotten wood around the frame splintered, and the door swung open with a shriek of rusty hinges. The smell hit us instantly. It wasn't just rot. It was human waste and rotting food. Marcus shined the light into the room. It was a cavernous, empty space filled with shadows. The windows were boarded up. "Police are on the way," Marcus shouted into the dark. "Come out now." Something skittered in the corner. We swept the light toward the dumbwaiter shaft in the center of the room. There was a nest built around the shaft opening. It was made of restaurant napkins, tablecloths, and stolen aprons. And sitting in the middle of the nest were the bones. Not just T-bone steaks. There were smaller bones, ribs, vertebrae, and piles of driver's licenses. I squinted at the licenses. Sarah Jenkins, Mark Tooth, Emily Vance. "Marcus," I choked out. These are missing people." Marcus stepped closer. "What? Look at the dates. These people went missing years ago." A sudden creak from the ceiling made us both jump. We looked up. The ceiling of the third floor had a hole in it, leading to the attic crawl space. And staring down at us through the hole weren't just 2 eyes. There were 6 pairs of eyes. It wasn't just one man, it was a pack. For a second, nobody moved. The 6 pairs of eyes in the ceiling crawl space blinked in unison, reflecting the beam of Marcus's flashlight. Then, a low collective hiss filled the room, a sound like air escaping a tire, but wet and guttural. "Run," Marcus whispered. He didn't have to tell me twice. As we turned to bolt for the door, the wood around the ceiling hole splintered. The first one dropped. It landed on all 4s, with a sickening slap of bare flesh against the floorboards. It was a woman, or at least it had been. She was emaciated, her ribs protruding sharply against paper-thin gray skin. Her hair was a matted nest of filth, and her fingernails were long curled and yellow, more like talons than nails. She let out a shriek that pierced my eardrums, and suddenly the others began to rain down from the ceiling. Thump, thump, thump. They moved with terrifying speed, scurrying on hands and feet like insects rather than people. "Go, go, go," Marcus screamed, swinging the meat cleaver wildly behind him to keep them at bay. I scrambled through the doorway, practically falling down the dusty staircase. The sound of pursuit was right behind us, the rapid, rhythmic slapping of bare feet on wood. I risked a glance back at the landing. 3 of them were swarming Marcus. He swung the cleaver, connecting with the arm of the first man we had seen. The man didn't even flinch. He just bared his teeth, filed down to sharp points, and lunged. "Get off me," Marcus roared, kicking the creature in the chest. The force sent the man tumbling back into the others, buying us a precious few seconds. We sprinted down the remaining stairs to the second floor. The transition was jarring. 1 second we were in a dark, rotting nightmare. The next we burst through the service door into the warm, golden glow of the second floor dining room. Soft jazz music was playing. The smell of expensive cologne and sizzling butter filled the air. 30 well-dressed patrons looked up from their meals, forks suspended halfway to their mouths, staring at the 2 sweaty, terrified employees bursting out of the forbidden door. "Call 911. Marcus screamed, his chef's coat, torn blood on his sleeve, not his own. "Everyone get out now." The customers didn't move fast enough. They were confused. But then it appeared in the doorway behind us. The emaciated woman. She stood there, framed by the dark stairwell, blinking against the bright chandelier lights. She looked at the room full of people, not with fear, but with a predatory hunger. She hissed, stepping onto the plush carpet. That broke the spell. Screams erupted. Chairs were overturned. Wine glasses shattered. The stampede toward the main exit was chaotic. We didn't stay to fight. We grabbed Chloe, who was standing frozen at the server station, and dragged her down the main stairs to the street. By the time we hit the cold winter air of the sidewalk, the sirens were already wailing. The police standoff lasted 4 hours. They sent in a tactical unit with K9 seconds. From the street, huddled under emergency blankets, we watched the flashlight beams sweeping the windows of the 3rd and 4th floors. We heard gunshots, 3 distinct pops, followed by shouting. When the police captain finally came over to interview us, he looked pale. He was a veteran officer, a guy who looked like he'd seen everything. But he wouldn't look us in the eye. "We detained 4 of them," he said, his voice tight. 2 males, 2 females. They're not verbal. They're being transported to a secure psychiatric facility. "There were more," I said, shivering. "I saw at least 6 or 7. The captain nodded grimly. "We know. The others, they got away." "Got away," Marcus snapped. "How? You have the building surrounded. The attic," the captain said, gesturing to the row of townhouses attached to the restaurant. "They broke through the firewalls between the buildings. There's a crawl space that runs the entire length of the block. They've probably been moving between these buildings for years. We found nests in 3 different attics, but it was what they found in the dumbwaiter shaft that made me quit the industry for good. When the forensics team fully dismantled the shaft the next day, they found a hollowed-out space between the 2nd and 3rd floors. A hidden compartment. Inside they found hundreds of items. Jewelry, watches, wallets. And they found a ledger. It was an old restaurant reservation book stolen from the host stand years ago. But they weren't writing reservations. They were keeping score. March 3rd, ribeye rare. April 10th, breadbasket. May 1st, chicken. They had been intercepting the dumbwaiter for a decade. We had been feeding them. Every time a chef complained about a missing side dish, every time a server thought they'd lost a basket of rolls, it was them. We were their personal catering service. But the last entry in the book, scrawled in charcoal, wasn't a food item. It was dated for the night of the blizzard, the night we found them. The entry read Chloe. They weren't planning to steal the food that night. They had jammed the rope on purpose. They were trying to lure someone to the shaft to check on it. They were trying to pull someone up. I never went back to the cellar. The restaurant closed down a month later. The scandal was too much to survive. The building is being renovated into luxury condos now. But I still live in Boston. And sometimes late at night, when I'm walking past those old historic rows of townhouses, I'll look up at the dark attic windows. I know the firewalls are thin. I know the crawl spaces connect. And I know that at least 3 of them are still out there, waiting for the dumbwaiter to ring.